I've gone ahead now and hatched in my line drawing according to what I discovered when I did this on my simple box form drawing. Now, as I mentioned, it's important to keep these lines very, very thin and light. So I used my Pilot G-Tech C4 for that. And you really have to be careful with this. It gets underneath your set square and blurs. As you can see, we'll start over on the left here. I've put in my shadow here and here and here that I discovered out there. The rest is getting washed with light, that whole wall. My draperies are casting a shadow over my blinds, so I was able to, and over my window as well. So I put that in, and that helped. Now all this pattern and texture is going to make the drawing more interesting and a lot easier to render. Even my light fixture, I used my understanding of the cone, and I put a little bit more detail, a little bit of more darkening down one side, the same side as I chose for my figure. But I didn't go to the edge. I kept it inside. You remember when we rendered our cone, I have a little bit darker on the inside, and not too dark though, just a little bit to show the crystals. I've also put a little bit of hatching on the bottom of my accent pillow and underneath here and on my undersides. Now I have an actual shape for her, so I shaped that shadow around that and around her leg underneath the sofa, but I left a little gap. I don't know if you can see, there's a little gap of without shadow here for the legs, to show the shadow for the legs. These are very important. These lines of reflection or accent, they're extremely important. They help to make your drawing a little more dramatic. And that's what we're going for here. We're not representing it realistically. This was a realistic rendition of these objects. So that's why we didn't emphasize the outlines quite so much. But this is graphic. It's meant to pop, really pop. So we've gone quite thick on our outside lines, much thinner on our inside lines. Not as thin as the G-Tech 4, not as thin as our hatching, but thin. And here we have the underside of this. You remember how that looked here. We've got that in shadow, and this side is in shadow, but not too heavy because it's not the focus. We don't want to make too much contrast. And here on our fireplace, we've set that all, recessed that all with our hatching as well. Our box drawing is going to come in handy one more time. We're going to assign values to each of our objects, our planes and our surfaces, and we'll know exactly which markers to use where and when to leave the white of the paper. Everything that's in the light is A, everything that's a half tone is B, and everything that's a shadow or a cast shadow, we'll label it C. This is getting a lot of light from the light below it, so this is a natural A, and so is this. That's our gable, so from here down to that shadow is an A. So that's going to be the white of the paper and the number 1 and the number 3 marker. So I think what would be best would be to have it lightest up here, but we'll see once we start rendering. So we'll go from dark to light, dark to light. Remember, that's your job, is to make gradations of value. Now your light is of course light everywhere. For now though, it's a front facing plane, so I think it's going to be both A and B. So mostly A in the center and maybe a little B on either side. So down the middle, the white of the paper, and 1, 2, 3, and a little bit 3, maybe a little accent of 5 over to the side. We have C here, and C here, and C. And this is shadow, C, and C, and C. So it's going to be mostly 5 with a little accent of 7, probably. Now, this part of the wall is definitely A. It's getting a lot of light, and that will set up the B side of our light fixture as well. Now, depending on what's happening with your draperies, you're going to have to look at that, and anywhere there's a little bit of shadow in between the draperies, you'll have to work that out. For example, I have some C inside here. But if the draperies aren't the focus, I might just leave that B. But the light is going to be an A, and then maybe this is just a B in here, rather than a shadow, a deep shadow. So see, the draperies move from being maybe a B at the bottom to an A in the middle and a B from the top. The window wall, we think of this as A across, but maybe being interrupted with some B and, oops, some B over on the side of your draperies, and some B over here, but it's mostly A. It's in the light. The top of the back of the sofa is definitely A. It's definitely light. But the part that's facing us is definitely B. And it's going to go from dark to light this way. So there'll be more 5 at the bottom and more 3 at the top, because the 3, that part is closer to the light. This is going to be 1, this is going to be A, with the 1 and the 3 moving back in space. So we'll make it a little more contrasty at the front, and so it's going to go dark to light this way. Never very dark, but dark to light this way, just the way we did on our cube. And this now is all a facing plane, so it's a halftone. So just like our box, it's a halftone. So this is B and B and B and B, and what you'll notice is that it will go from dark to light this way. So it will be more, a little accent of 5 up here and 3 closer to the surface, because there's light bouncing up into this area of the sofa. This whole wall, that's going to be A. That's light. The top of our fireplace is A. The front of our fireplace is going to be B. This will be B. And remember, this was C. This was shadow here. So now the tricky part is this one. I think we should leave it B as well, so that we can see a contrast to our shadow. So if you go from dark to light this way, where it's lightest, it will be nice contrast for the shadow inside. That's our whole purpose here in putting all of this in, is to build up enough contrast for things to bounce. So these looked far more attractive when we had this dark around it. It made them bounce. This part is all lit up. So your carpeting, if you have some planking, that's going to be an A. This will be A, and this will definitely be A because it's right in the light. Over along this side, this is in an A. It's getting light. This is our shadow in the corner. Now, this is something we'll have to decide about this. Now, I can't even really see very much of that little tiny bit inside there because I filled my shelves, as should you fill your shelves. So, but you could consider this whole thing as C, and most often you'll do that in order to pop out what's sitting on those shelves. So this will be a C. So everything that we've colored in blue before, you'll be able to keep that as shadow. Now, we're the same situation we were here. This now is going to be B. This will be A. But this will be B as well. So and you have to be willing, even though you've made all of these plans, you have to be willing to alter them. As you start to render, you have to begin to relate one thing to the next. And your goal in this drawing is to make the sofa the most important thing in the room. It sets the tone of the room, although you may have the fireplace as the feature. It really depends, but in my case, it's the little shades that I've drawn. It softens this pointy, rather square place. The shelves themselves are A, on top. We don't see a top here, just the underside, and that would be a C. It's definitely shadow in there.